안녕하세요 여러분. 저는 노랭이라고 합니다. 반갑습니다. 저는 한국어에 관련된 리서치 아나리스트로 활동하고 있고요. 그래서 오늘은 주식 경험에 대해서 얘기하도록 하겠습니다.
So how did you find out about JK Network Services?
JK Network Services, malakas na exposure ng JK Services ngayon sa Facebook, meron sa JobStreet, pero in my case, sa JobStreet ko na kuha yung job information.
So, kamusta naman po yung relationship ng recruiter nyo sa inyo? Kamusta po yung assistance ng recruiter nyo nung nag-apply po kayo sa JK Network?
Ayun, sobrang dali ng process kasi sa JK, sila na yung parang bridge mo. Hindi mo na kailangan kontakin yung employer mo, hindi mo na kailangan kontakin yung HR mo kasi parang collated na lahat ng information dun sa JK. So, in my case, since BPO yung company ko, we know yung BPO, may mga client companies ko sila. So, usually, kapag mag-a-apply ka sa kanila, so may interview ka sa company mo, may interview ka rin sa client company ng company mo. So, pag-iisip natin, mahirap siya i-coordinate kasi marami kang kailangan tapos natin. Pero pag sa JK ka nag-apply, kaya nilang i-process lahat ng information sa'yo and in a timely manner.
I
see. Network, we have jobs for all nationalities. JK Network, if you want to work in the Philippines. JK Network.
Good day, everyone. Welcome to the third day of keynote lectures of the first Philippine-Korea Youth Forum with the theme Borderless Collaboration and Exchange. PKYF is organized by UP Arirang, co-presented by UP Korea Research Center and Pinoy Scholars sa Korea, made possible by APOP and JK Network Services, in partnership with Ysla Animo, Anyong PNU, and UP Uyo Muyo, in cooperation with Du Hanguk Society and FEU International Studies Society. Also brought to you by Ateneo Celadon and co-promoted by Korean Cultural Center in the Philippines. I am Adarna from UP Arirang and I will be your host for today. This session is live on Facebook and on YouTube. So today we'll be under the Culture and Tourism track and we will be learning not just one but two keynote lectures from our invited speakers. So feel free to drop in your questions on the comments anytime during the lectures and we will be answering those during the open forum later on. And for everyone who is streaming this and would like to share this on your social media accounts, please use the hashtag PKYF2021 and hashtag Transcending Borders. Also, don't forget to tag UP Arirang Social. Now, for our first speaker, he joined a Fox PhD program as a Temple Presidential Fellow in Business Administration in Tourism and Hospitality Concentration in 2020. Prior to Fox, he had multiple professional experiences both in scholarship and industry. He worked as a senior lecturer of the Asian Youth Institute of Tourism in University of the Philippines. Participated in several projects of tourism planning firms based on South Korea and served as a startup CEO or project manager of Dinofalo, a Korean web development company. His profession was once featured in Rappler and NCA newsletter of Rotterdam School of Management, Erasmus University, Netherlands. His research focuses on consumer behavior and service marketing in hospitality and tourism context. His research papers appear in leading scholarly journals, including Journal of Destination Marketing and Management, Current Issues in Tourism, World Leisure Journal, and more. He received Best Paper Awards in 2017, Global Congress of Special Interest Tourism and Hospitality Conference, and 2018 Pan Asia International Tourism Conference. He also serves as a reviewer of tourism recreation research. To talk about why South Koreans travel to the Philippines, let's call on Mr. Wangoo Lee.
Um, Thank you, Darna, for great introduction. Um, Good afternoon, everyone. Here in Houston, Texas, where I'm currently located, it is actually good midnight. I'm really pleased and honored to have you all, the young generation who eager to be connected and engage with other Korean and Filipino fellows in the very first Philippine-Korean Youth Forum. I greatly appreciate the organizers for inviting me as a keynote speaker for the tourism and culture track. For this valuable 40 minutes, I was requested to answer why South Koreans travel to the Philippines. And well, yeah, we may agree that it's because it's more fun in the Philippines. Problem solved. And yeah, the lecture finished. Um, yeah, I mean, that's true. And many of us can agree with this. But here in this lecture, I'd like to shed light on a new perspective on Korean travelers' experiences in the Philippines that really makes them love the country, be attached to the country, and eventually continuously visit the Philippines several times, which is actually called eudaimonium. You can see it here. Or because it's tourism, it is called tourist eudaimonic experience. I prepared this lecture not just to be informative, like you learn something from this lecture, but also to have some broader implications, especially aligned with the forum's vision that we get connected to each other between the countries, beyond the borders. So hopefully this short lecture gives one of the good starting points for all of you participating in the forum for this year. All right, I'm going to quickly introduce myself and then tell you a bit about what we're going to cover today. So first thing first, I'm currently a PhD student as a presidential fellow at Fox School of Business, concentrated on tourism and hospitality. And before I start the PhD journey, I was kind of fortunate to have balanced work experiences, not only in school, industry, but also governmental sectors too. I was actually in the Philippines last year, and last year. So I was a lecturer at the Asian Institute of Tourism in the University of the Philippines. And also I was the former CEO of one South Korea-based web development company, which was founded by my friends and me. And I also participated in tourism planning consulting projects for some cities and provinces in Korea. I worked several times with KTO, which is Korean Tourism Organization, which is Korean DOT, Korean Department of Tourism. And I also worked with the Seoul City as well. And again, back to my PhD journey. I'm currently doing academic research in tourist happiness, service technology, and this is academic method stuff, which is about necessity theory development. All right, this is actually my picture taken this year. And these pictures kind of prove that I've been in the Philippines quite for a long time. Isn't it fascinating that I have the pictures from the same spot in the intramurals, but different timelines in the Philippines? So it's like 20 years ago, 10 years ago, just last year, and you see that I'm getting I'm getting taba. So yeah, that's fascinating. So yeah, Koreans do love traveling the Philippines. Um, According to the Philippine Department of Tourism, in 2019, just right before the COVID-19 happened, more than 1.9 million Koreans visited the Philippines, which makes Koreans the top most visit nationality, which is exceeding the big countries like China and United States. This is more um, fascinating if you think about the Korean population. Approximately, there are 50 million Koreans, and that means almost 4 out of 100 Koreans are visiting the Philippines in 1 year. That's actually wow. So this really makes us to be curious about the reasons behind it, right? Why a lot of Koreans visit the Philippines. Um, I might actually want you guys to give the answers first, why Koreans travel to the Philippines. So, I think this can be our first interactive thing for everyone who's listening and watching now. You know, I believe even though we are meeting virtually, but this will be great if we can still interact and communicate with each other, transcending the borders. So I think you guys may type things with a chat function here. So please, I know that there's like a chat function, not only YouTube and Facebook too. So please give me some reasons, one reason that you guys think why Koreans love to travel the Philippines. And maybe I can just wait a few seconds. So in your perspective, what is the most important factor to bring Koreans to the Philippines? Is it travel destination? Culture? Oh yeah, I see. Andrea. Tropical weather. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, that's gonna be something um attractive. Thousands of beaches, tropical locations, rich culture, diving tour, golf. Yeah, beach, food. Yeah, all these are maybe the stuff that Koreans cannot really experience in our countries. People, yeah, people, Filipino hospitality. I see the English education. Wow, okay, yeah. Scenic views, Filipino food. Great. Tropical country, and then, yeah, cheaper, meaning financial reasons too. Affordable, yeah, true. So yeah, that's great. I like to get the your perspectives, and then I believe that um, we all have the true answers. So yeah, um, that sounds very true. Uh, that Koreans love to, as you said, that Koreans love to visit the natural places where they cannot find easily in Korea, such as you said, the beaches, crystal color beaches in like in the Boracay, Cebu, Palawan, or Batanes, or maybe mountainous places like the north part, Banawe, Sagada, or even like Rizal, Quezon areas. They all find adventures and exciting activities there. Um, so there are like great entertainments and festivals are there all around the Philippines. And this is aligned with the catchphrase, it's more fun in the Philippines. Um, but I'd really like to go further than just having fun in the Philippines from Korean travelers' experiences. Are we really giving simply fun experience to the Koreans? Think about in this way. Some people say, oh, I felt really, really happy happy when they travel the country, right? It's common to express their experience with the word happiness. So when they say happy, does it mean that's same as being fun? Is being happy equivalent with having fun? Well, I believe that the Philippines is a happy destination for Koreans, and therefore, it is really more than fun in the Philippines. Yeah, that's true that this country provides many fun and pleasurable experiences that sort of provoke positive emotions to the travelers. But the country also provides sort of personally meaningful experiences that are created by the Philippines, but also by the Koreans' unique characteristics and societal features. So I'm going to say that. So I'd like to call uh, the Philippines as eudaimonic destination for Koreans. And then for this lecture, I'm gonna explain uh, why I think in that way. So for this lecture, I'm going to talk you through a little bit about what eudaimonium and hedonia are, and what are the differences between eudaimonic and hedonic destinations, and consequently discuss why Koreans may consider the Philippines as a eudaimonic destination. I'm gonna show you one video, and one reason why I'm going to start with this video is that I think the place in this video is really a good example of the destination where travelers are not just having fun and enjoying, but they also experience something more than hedonic emotional outcomes in terms of happiness. Yeah, that was short video. So this place is called Masungitio Reserve. I believe that many of you guys know. It's a conservation area located in Baras, Rizal, just a few kilometers away from Metro Manila. Um, it's biologically and ecologically and even geologically valuable place where visitors can see sort of um, karst peaks, caves, and beautiful natural uh, animals and plants. But it also kind of sounds quite tiring to do trekking and hiking there too, right? Um, Maybe the visitors of Masungitio Reserve would not feel pleasurable as much as they go to party destinations like Boracay, where you might find something fun and sensual experiences. But in this case, the visitors of Masungi, whether experience somehow negative emotions by feeling tired, which is not really hedonic experience anymore, but it's more like the opposite to the hedonic experiences. But what is so special about the visitors' experiences in Masungicho Reserve? It is that they experience a high level of accomplishment, and they might also experience a high level of growth by finishing these challenging courses and trails out there. Um, sometimes it's just a rope or like a skinny, thin rope made the bridge above a very tall and deep valley, like a few hundred feet. Yeah, that's very challenging. And another special experience is that the visitors get highly engaged with the Masungi homeowners, like birds, insects, lizards, snakes, or even like monkeys. And the very high engagement with nature often provides a sort of elevating films that make the experiences really meaningful and special. All right, so I'm gonna briefly going through a quick definition. So the philosophically and even scientifically, in the perspective of modern psychology, happiness can be divided into two categories, which are eudaimonia and hedonia. And the definitions always get differ, but these are my favorite ones. So for hedonia, it is striving for or experiencing pleasure, enjoyment, and comfort. And according to Aristippus from the ancient Greek, he argued that happiness is solely seeking for the pleasure while you just avoid the pain. And yeah, that's pretty straightforward, right? So the hedonic happiness seekers would see the best life is just simply being emotionally happy and feeling pleasure. On the other hand, another famous ancient Greek philosopher, Aristotle, kind of disagreed with the hedonic happiness definition, but he further argued that happiness is not all about seeking hedonic pleasure, but it's a living in truth to one's daimon. In English, it's one's true self. This might sound kind of difficult, but I believe we all have the times in life feeling like, oh, life is good, but something is missing. And we also hear similar stories from, especially from the billionaires who seem to have achieved almost everything in their lives um, and are supposed to be happiest people, right? But they also sort of confess that their lives are kind of unhappy and sometimes even in vain. And some of them uh, even say like, "Oh, I actually found the true meaning of my life in donations, donating all of my money, or volunteering, or something else like that." So eudaimonia is relevant with that, and then eudaimonia can be actually um, it might sound quite abstract actually and broad, but it is a feeling that you feel being where you want to be, and then it's doing what you want to do. You feel you do something eudaimonic, and then you're gonna feel kind of alive. With these definitions, we can actually categorize our experiences or experiential states into hedonia and eudaimonia too. So hedonic experiences include feeling pleasure, like fun, excited, and enjoyment. But you don't always have to be very hyped and excited. Um, if you feel entirely relaxed and comfortable, detached from the concerns and worries, that's also sort of hedonic experience too. And for eudaimonic experiences, you can think about activities that you might feel meaningful or self-actualized accomplishment you feel drawn. All right, let me give a small quiz. This is second interactive thing. I'm gonna give you a question and please type the answer in the chat, okay? Imagine that we all visited a theme park, maybe Ancient Kingdom in the Philippines, and then Lotte World in Korea. And we are riding a roller coaster. I believe that everyone likes it. Don't be scared. So obviously, we can say this experience is a happy experience, right? So is this happiness more like a hedonic experience or eudaimonic experience? Please type 1 if you think it's hedonic experience, and type 2 if you think it's eudaimonic experience. 1, 2, go. Yeah, I think there's a delay, but I believe you guys will answer soon. 1, 1, 1, 1. All right, great. I like it. I really like that we can still interact with each other. This might make a trouble for. Anyway, all right. So great. I'm glad to see that many of you guys are getting it. All right, let me pass. All right, now let's imagine um different thing. Let's imagine about marathoner who aims to finish 42 kilometers running. After a few attempts to join the marathon event, he finally made finish the whole 42 kilometers for the first time in his life. Um, please type 1 if you think it's hedonic one for him, and please type 2 if you think it's a eudaimon experience for him. 1, 2, go. Yeah, 2, 2. Oh, there's 1, 1, 2, 2, 2. All right, let's go. I like it. Yeah, so probably, well, not probably, obviously, the running experience for him would not be that much hedonic, but maybe it's more like physical pains actually. It's opposite from the hedonic experience while running in the event. It is also far from feeling comfortable. But this marathon challenge is very meaningful to him. And so when he finished it, he'd have felt a huge accomplishment that makes him very happy. And also, marathon might be a self-actualizing activity for him. So when he runs in the marathon event, he's gonna feel that, oh, this is the reason for my life, or I feel I'm alive when I run for this marathon. Um, Another way of looking at this is obviously a tourist experience, which is actually seen as about feeling pleasure and fun usually. But sometimes a tourist may also choose to have unpleasurable or non-hedonic experience too. This woman, this picture, for example, let's say that she decided to go traveling abroad by herself, alone, without friends, without family. So she went there alone, just to be kind of lonely, solitary. Um, from her travel, she may not be that excited or thrilled, or rather, she may feel somehow negative by being lonely, feeling lonely. But this temporal socially isolated experience in this place, where she's not familiar with with the people and then places, um, this might give her an opportunity to think about who she really is, why she lives, or where she's going in her life. This travel experience would be very meaningful and memorable for her. So in this tourist experience as well, eudaimonic experience also exists. The meaningful experience also exists. Though we commonly imagine something hedonic, right, when it comes to traveling, but it still exists. But what is the reason that we might want to differentiate the eudaimonic and hedonic experiences in tourism? Why do we have to think that, oh, this one is eudaimonic experience and the other one is hedonic experience when it comes to happy experience? Well, it's because simple answer is that it is because tourists with eudaimonic experience and tourists with hedonic experience will have different behaviors after all. Last year, my professor and I researched about comparing tourists' eudaimonic and hedonic experiences. This is what academic researchers do, by the way. We surveyed around plus 500 people, and from their responses, with the little help with the statistical stuff, we could build a theoretical model regarding tourist happiness experience. And so for the tourists who felt hedonic, of course, um, they were having fun. So they were very, very satisfied with the trip. But the issue here is that will they really come back to that place again? You can think about this. There's like highly satisfied traveler, and then do you think that satisfied traveler will come back to that place in the next time or not? Okay, think about it. On the other hand, the tourists who experienced eudaimonia from the destination, well, they're not necessarily very satisfied with the experience because it's not hedonic. It's not all about excitement, but the trip was meaningful, personally meaningful, and then you find about yourself with the trip, but it's not really fun. But you know what? These meaningful experiences, um, the tourist could feel self-actualized or overcome some challenges, um, feeling accomplishment or something like that. They will start being attached to the destination. I mean, they will start loving the place. And even though that place is not such a fun place, you see there, um, the travelers will perceive that place as their own place, and then therefore there will be always want to revisit there continuously for the rest of their lives or something like that. Okay, so hedonic experience and eudaimonic experience can have different outcomes. Um, I want to show the tourists' actual statements. As a side project, actually last year, I was interviewing some international tourists in the Philippines, and one interviewee stated that she loved the trip in the Philippines. She actually visited Cebu, and she goes, Cebu was just a perfect place for her to release all my stress. Um, she joined the canyoning activity in Cebu, and she found it really thrilling. So overall, she had such a hedonic experience from the Philippine trip, Cebu trip. But please read here. Well, I feel like I'm done with the Philippines already from the last trip. I'd like to choose a different country for my next trip, of course. Yeah, that's fair. So yes, she had exciting time in the Philippines. She was very satisfied with her trip. But this lady now does not find anything new and novel from the Philippines, at least as much as she does not want to go back to the Philippines for next trip. Um, this is actually a very conventional way of looking at tourists. According to some of the classical tourist theories, tourists are the ones who seek for the new experiences, not the familiar ones. So in her first visit, everything was very new to her, very exciting, and then she enjoyed it. But she now realizes that maybe for the second visit, she will not be able to get the same surprises, same experiences that she got from the first visit. All right, here's another interview. This guy is already confessing here that he keeps going back to the Philippines, but the reason is not that the country always excites him. Of course, yeah, because he has been there for several times, so it's not new thing. So he goes, honestly, going to the country that I've never visited will excite me more. I always go back there because there are too many personally special memories. I'd like to highlight here again. So there are too many personally special memories. He further goes, I really miss my place, friends, and everything. So for this interview, Philippines is already not really new destination anymore. He will not consider traveling the Philippines as adventures anymore. This is too familiar place for him. which may make him bored. But you know what? He states that he keeps going back to the Philippines because what? It is meaningful for him. He loves this country, he's attached, and he really needs to go back to this country, which is not, even though it's not new anymore, but it's a special place for him. So it's not like touristic eudaimonic experience is always better than hedonic experience, or the other way around too. I'm saying that they have pros and cons. Providing hedonic experience only would maybe instantly make many tourists emotionally happy, but you may not want to expect them from them like the long-term relationship with the Philippines. But providing eudaimonic experience might be the suitable to make some tourists really love the country and visit there again and again. But for the first timers, first visitors, you might just disappoint them and make them bored with too much serious experiences or too difficult challenges. So these experiences should complement each other and well balanced. I'm gonna discuss it further in the next the other slides though. All right, so we go to the last question. So do Koreans really think the Philippines a eudaimony destination too? Or do they just perceive it as, you know, more fun place or exciting place? I had been doing research that is relevant to this question and could not in the Philippines about the Philippines and could not finalize the project yet. But I'd like to share some preliminary findings because I believe it still sufficiently demonstrates that Koreans do find Philippines as eudaimonic destination. So it's another thing that the academic researchers usually do. And here, I wanted to analyze what Korean travel bloggers posted in their blogs, who actually traveled during 2019 from January 1st to December 31st. What I did is something called big data textual analysis. And this computer scientific method enables me to analyze like a high number of blogs, like the hundreds or even thousands blogs with the computing system and algorithm. So for me, in total, I could analyze the 724 blogs, and this is the result. All right. This is called a word cloud, and it shows the frequent words that come out in the analyzed blogs. And so the bigger the words are, that means that the more frequent they are mentioned in the blogs, they're more important. All right. Let me first find some hedonia related words. Here we see fun, the big word fun, right? That's great. So Korean traveler experience matches with what Philippine tourism mainly promotes. So you guys are doing great. But another interesting finding is the biggest words, recharging, and also stress-free. Stress-free. Here, these are the top 6 most frequently mentioned hedonic words. And actually, you can find here that many Koreans are not only coming to the Philippines for finding fun or enjoyable experiences, but also for escaping from their stressful everyday lives in Korea. They gives really important, I think it gives really important implication that when you'd like to understand why Koreans visit the Philippines, we also find not only what Philippine tourism provides to the Koreans, but also have to find what are the circumstances and characteristics that Korean tourists have currently. Here we could find that one of the biggest factors, one of the biggest factors that motivates Korean tourists to visit the Philippines is within themselves. being stressed out with their everyday lives, with the company or boss or employee, with the coworkers, and they really needed to leave the country for finding relaxation and comfort rather than solely finding for the pleasurable or fun activities. Um, one one blog says that, oh, I want to escape 해조선. That's the word calling Korea in a bad way. While lying down on the beach, I was able to recharge myself. And the other one says, I just wanted to leave these stressful colleagues and boss and go to the place where I can just relax without thinking about my work. The other one says, my company always makes employees work extra hours. I really needed a break. So yeah, that's what we could find with the hedonic experiences in the Philippines. Next, now we go to the eudaimonic words mentioned in analyzed blogs. So overall, Koreans in the Philippines felt about relatedness, like a friendship, family, autonomy. They felt free, self-confident. They felt meaningful, accomplished, elevated. That's usually found from the nature destinations that they've never visited before, and they also felt grown up. One thing, one thing to mention is that the most frequently mentioned keyword was about relatedness. Here, one interview said, "I felt like I have been a close friend with a name for a long time. I felt warm heart." And the other one says, it is so special that the local people always greet me and treat me very well. Their gestures are true, not fake. So it shows that for Koreans, the good positive experiences with the interaction with local people or friends make the trip meaningful and maybe personally special, which make them start being attached to the Philippines and they go back there again and again. Okay. So consequently, I put this slide because I really wanted to make my suggestion clear for the tourism Philippine. I mean the Philippine tourism toward Korean tourists. This shows the 4 different destination categories according to eudaimonic and hedonic experiences. The first one, not hedonic and not eudaimonic destination, can be called, of course, unhappy destination. And for the destinations categorized in here, they really need to plan to get to any other categories by increasing both or either hedonic or eudaimonic tourist experiences. I believe that usually people mostly perceive Philippines as a travel destination here, hedonic, but not really eudaimonic destination. And this kind of destination can be called as a sweet destination. You know, giving like a sweet candies or the chocolates definitely satisfy the kids, the children. But if you keep giving them, this will obviously damage their teeth or their health in the long run. This is the same for the sweet destination, and maybe Philippines may want to promote more eudaimonic perspective of it. All right, let's say, what if the Philippines actually gets transformed, not really hedonic anymore, but truly eudaimonic destination? Well, this kind of destination is actually dry destination. So if there's no single element of hedonia, but only something meaningful, well, something challenge, something accomplishment thingy, well, that's truly serious and boring place. Imagine that kids go to the traditional type of museum. Of course, this may be interesting for some kids, but this kind of museum really, it's not gonna be loved by most of the kids. Maybe not. So I would suggest that the Philippines should promote itself as hedonic and eudaimonic destination, which will make fulfilled destination. From just being sweet candy like destination to sweet, still sweet, but also meaningful place. Philippine tourism can retain more Koreans to love traveling the Philippines, not just one or a few times, but several times in the long run. Yeah. So lastly, I want to close my lecture showing one good destination example for the hedonic and eudaimonic fulfilled destination, which is actually Batanes.
여긴 얼마나 고요한 곳이길래 경적을 울리라는 친절한 표지판까지 있는 걸까요?
사람들이 오기가 힘들어요. 멀기도 하고 그렇다 보니까 여기 모든 것들이 사람의 손을 정말 안 탄 것 같아요.
사람들은 이곳을 세상의 끝이라고 부른답니다. 접근이 쉽지 않아 20여 년 전까지만 해도 자급자족과 물물 교환을 하며 살았다는 사람들. 여행은 늘 예상을 빗나가곤 한다는데 여긴 상상했던 대로였습니다. 잘 웃어서 행복한지 행복해서 잘 웃는지
진지자자자 진지자 이런 느낌 아니야?
만나는 사람마다 웃는 얼굴입니다. 더불어 살아가는 전통이 남아있고 파란 하늘과 바다가 끝없이 펼쳐지는 한없이 투명한 바타네스입니다.
So yeah, here in this video, the Korean traveler guy found Batanes very special because it's not really easily approachable for everyone. So it makes it special. And the local people looked happy and they were really kind to him. And you see that even though the place is not noisy party destinations like Boracay, but very quiet, you could relax and also enjoy the real nature that has not been touched a lot. Yeah, so it's blended with the hedonic and eudaimonic elements there. And I believe maybe we have been too much focused on Boracay like highly developed hedonic destination. I'm not saying that this is wrong, but if we desire Korean travelers not just to consider the Philippines as one-time visit exciting place, but if we desire them to consider the Philippines as personally meaningful place, and I believe they want to come back and again, the destinations like Batanes should be more promoted and they should be well managed to the Korean travelers. All right, so hopefully my short conversation gave at least a small thing that you guys could think about the Philippine tourism and Korean travelers. I hope from the rest of the activities that you will have during the forum, you could have a good eudaimon experience by collaborating and exchanging knowledge as well as love and the friendship, so you guys could contribute to more solid and stronger friendship between two countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sir Wangoo, for that very insightful and interactive talk. We learned about the difference of eudaimonia and hedonia and how Koreans find Philippines as a eudaimonic or a hedonic destination. Again, for everyone who is watching, please comment down your questions regarding this talk and we will be having an open forum later on. But before we move on, As Animo would like to invite everyone to join them on their weekly podcast. start preparing your headphones and snacks because Adja Animus Adja Kaja podcast is finally crash landing on Adja Animus social media account every Friday at 8 p.m. Don't miss out on this fun journey every Friday until May 14 on Adja Animus official Facebook page. Now, moving on for our next speaker. Our next speaker is a faculty member of the Department of International Studies and currently the Associate Dean of Institute of Arts and Sciences of Far Eastern University. He holds a master's degree in international studies with concentration on international relations from the Graduate School of International Studies of Sogang University in Seoul, Republic of Korea. He was a program officer of the ASEAN Korea Center handling external relations and the program and activities of ASEAN Korea Youth from 2010 to 2015. He served as a chair of the Department of International Studies of FU from 2015. He has taught courses on international and regional organizations, theories of international relations, government and politics of East Asia, and introduction to international relations. His interests include ASEAN affairs, ASEAN-Korea relations, East Asian international relations, and human security. Let's all welcome Mr. Mark Salvador Ysla to talk about the virtual cultural mobilization campaigns of Korea and Philippines.
Good evening. First, thank you very much for inviting me to this youth forum. And I hope that I'll be able to share insights about the topic that was requested. Can you see my slides now? Not yet. I hope you can see my slides now. Okay, so good evening, everyone. Once again, I'd like to thank the organizers of the Philippine-Korea Youth Forum for inviting me in this event as one of the keynote speakers. So this evening, I'll be sharing insights about virtual cultural mobilization campaigns in Korea and the Philippines during COVID-19 pandemic. I believe that that we are all aware that we're facing an enormous challenge. COVID-19 crisis has an impact in all dimensions of our lives, public health, labor, social interaction, even political debates, and also use of public spaces, economy, environment, and even our cultural life. In a sense, COVID-19 severely affected our cultural life. We cannot go to libraries, memorials, museums, and all cultural venues are actually closed. Performances, festivals, parades, carnivals, and other intangible heritage events are also canceled. Moreover, another impact of COVID-19 is that many workers in the cultural sector are somehow severely affected, given that severely affected by the pandemic, because even during the pandemic they are in a precarious situation. Most of them are self-employed, they're freelancers, and most of the time, I mean, especially now that we have COVID-19, most of them, if not all of them, were left for months without any income or revenue. So therefore, the active involvement of all in the cultural life of the community was somehow damaged by COVID-19. And that includes, of course, the welfare of people and the quality of our, society. Hence, it is interesting to talk about, to know more about virtual cultural mobilization of two countries, for us not just to compare and contrast, but more importantly, to learn the things the two countries are doing in order to continue to preserve and promote their respective culture. So my presentation this evening will center on the following. I'll give a brief background of the Philippines and Korea for those who still don't have enough information. Um, and then I'm going to talk about what are the important cultural policies related to culture for us to have a basic understanding of how two countries mobilize their culture. Third, I'd like to talk about government institutions that are involved in, promotion and preservation of culture heritage, and also involved in policymaking. And then I'm going to talk about what are the virtual cultural mobilization campaigns of Korea and the Philippines, and we'll give some insights for the concluding remarks. So Korea is one of the most homogeneous countries in the world, ethnically and linguistically speaking. Um, the Republic of Korea has experienced rapid economic growth over the last 50 years. One of the advanced economy that offers development experience that inspires many developing countries in terms of sustainable development, provision of infrastructure, and better services to improve the lives of people, and transition to a very dynamic knowledge economy. With a population of 51.7 million, it is one of the economically advanced country in Asia and the Pacific. It's also considered as a cultural juggernaut, thanks, of course, to the immense popularity of Hallyu or the Korean Wave. In terms of the Global Competitiveness Index of World Economic Forum, the country ranks number 26. Whereas if we're going to look at the Philippines, of course, the Philippines is an archipelagic country in Southeast Asian region. The country has a total population of 108.19 million, and the archipelago stretches for about 1,150 miles from the north and about 700 miles in the southern base. So in terms of economy, the Philippines has about 9,200 US dollars in terms of GDP per capita. And in terms of the Global Competitiveness Index, it's around now its rank is about 52. Now let's move on to the discussion about important culture-related policies. In Korea, there are about 78 laws that are related to culture as well as public relations in Korea. While in the Philippines, there are about 64 culture-related laws. Of course, other proclamation by the president are not included, and there are also Republic Acts that were created just to strengthen institutions that are already existing. The most important policy for the Republic of Korea perhaps is the Framework Act on Culture. The Framework Act on Culture is the fundamental ideas of this act are to recognize the significance of culture in developing a democratic nation and enhancing the quality of life for individual citizens. It was also created to ensure that states and local governments would perform their role in spreading the value of culture to to all the members of the society and sectors of the society, including education, environment, human rights, welfare, politics, economy, so on and so forth. It's also created to ensure that individuals are not discriminated against in cultural expressions and activities, and also realize the principles of autonomy, creativity. Another important framework is the Framework Act on the Promotion of Cultural Industries. And the purpose of this act is to lay the groundwork for the development of cultural industries and enhance the competitiveness, contributing to the improvement of the quality of national cultural life and development of the national economy. So historically, if you're going to look at the policies or the cultural related policies of Korea, it's important or it's quite significant for us to be able to understand the cultural industry based on three criteria. Okay, so the first one is the affirmation of national identity. Second, culture as a tool in strengthening regimes. And then you also have culture as a national economic instrument. In the case of the Philippines, you have, in the case of the Philippines, you have, of course, the 1987 Constitution, Philippine Constitution, that guarantees the preservation, the enrichment, and dynamic evolution of Filipino national culture based on the principles of unity, diversity, in a climate of free artistic and intellectual expression. Okay, you also have the National Cultural Heritage Act of 2009. It is an act providing for the protection and the preservation of national cultural heritages, strengthening National Commission for Culture and the Arts. Yeah. And then you have the Republic Act number 8492, which is an act establishing a national museum system, providing for its permanent home and for other purposes. It is also important to note, I wanted to share this one, that in the Philippine Development Plan of 2017 to 2020, the government has priority areas for cultural agenda. So the first is safeguarding and enshrining cultural heritage. Second is achieving equity and inclusion in accessing cultural resources and services. And the third one is sustaining and enhancing cultural assets to foster creativity, innovation for social economic growth. So with this Philippine Development Plan, we already have an idea how exactly the government will push through with its cultural policies. So let me also share with you some of the cultural and public relations acts in Republic of Korea. If you're going to look at these Republic Acts or the laws that were crafted in Korea, you'll see that there's really a goal to somehow support the various sectors of or various sectors related to the cultural industry. Okay, so you have the framework for the promotion of leisure of citizens. You have the Public Performance Act. enforcement decree of the special action for the preservation and promotion of ancient cities. You also have the preservation and promotion of ancient cities and game industry related acts. Okay, so these are some of the cultural related policies. We also have, as I forgot to mention, the Framework Act on Korean language. On the part of the Philippines, these are some of the cultural policies. So as I mentioned, there's already the 1987 Constitution, and then you have an act making flag ceremony compulsory in all educational institutions, um, an act prescribing the code of national flag, anthem, motto, coat of arms, and other heraldic items and devices of the Philippines. Um, so these are some of the examples of the cultural policies. Okay, it's for me. If you're going to ask me, these are the laws. Somehow is to kind of establish, cultural identity of Filipinos. Okay, as opposed to the idea of, as opposed to how South Korea um, crafted some of the laws related to cultural policies. So now let's talk about institutions related to the promotion and also the protection of um, culture. Okay, so of course, in the for the Republic of Korea, you have the Ministry of Culture, Sports, and Tourism, which is the main government agency uh, that is in charge of cultural promotion. So here is their website. If you go to their website, you will see there are several information that you can find about the Ministry of Culture. You have about entertainment, culture, arts, Korean information. It's more of a portal where you can actually go to other, institutions, government agencies that somehow or affiliated to the Ministry of Culture and Sports, and also um, has the responsibility to promote Korean culture. So these are some of the affiliated organizations. You have the um, National Institute of the Korean Language. You have National Museum of Korea, Korea Culture and Information Service, National Gugak Center, National Folk Museum of Korea. National Library is also included in the affiliated organizations. National Theater of Korea, and National Museum of Modern Art and Contemporary Arts. And then you have the National Museum of Korea. Okay. If you visit this particular site, you would see visitors information. So here in the notice, they are closing, but when I checked the website, they're now accepting reservations. If you want to visit the museum, you can reserve, or you can have an appointment so that they can book you on a specific time, because of course, because of the COVID-19 restrictions. But compared to the Philippines today, Korea doesn't really have, a very strict lockdown. Okay, so yeah, later I'll discuss what are the things that you can find in the website. And then you have the National Kukak Center, or Kungnik Kugakwon. Um, this is an institution in charge of course, showcasing Korean traditional music and also um, performances. So if you're more into, learning more about traditional culture, if you're tired of hearing, K-pop music, and you want to learn more about pansori, you can always visit this site and check some of the performances. And then you have the Cultural Heritage Administration, Munha Jejong, and the purpose of this institution is to oversee the administration of all cultural heritages, the UNESCO heritage sites, palaces. So they're the ones in charge of it. You also have, as part of the affiliated organizations of the Ministry of Culture and Sports, the Public Policy Broadcasting Service Korea. Okay, so this one is more of sharing updates about the government. Okay, but there's also a program for culture, as you can see in this photo of the website. Now let's look at the institutions in the Philippines. So the main institution in the Philippines is the National Commission for Culture and the Arts. This is the head. This is the lead agency for the promotion of culture and also the arts. And if you visit their website, you would see some of the programs that they're doing. There you can also see the mandates of the institution. And then, of course, you have the National Museum of the Philippines, which is now, I think one of the popular destinations in Manila. So this is the website, and here you can check some of the museum branches, what are the collections that they have, and then the different divisions within that specific institution. Another institution related to culture in the Philippines is the Cultural Center of the Philippines. And this is a cultural event center that houses many performance companies, okay, and they showcase different performances related to Philippine culture. And then you have the Commission sa Wikang Filipino, and this is under the Office of the President. And of course, the primary mandate of this is to somehow look into the language of the Philippines and the promotion of it. And now let's look at the virtual cultural mobilization campaigns of Korea and the Philippines during the COVID-19 pandemic. Is there anyone here who was able to experience let's say cultural performance, saw cultural performances virtually um, in the Philippines, for example? Anyone? Wait, let me check the. Okay, so while checking the responses, because I cannot see the responses via YouTube. Okay. Why can't I find it? Anyway, so later I'll check it again. So let's move on to um, what are the virtual cultural mobilization campaigns. If you visit the Ministry of Culture site, the Korean Culture and Information Service, you'd be able to see links to the Korean cultural centers, and the different activities that they actually do. And then you can also look into the 24-hour streaming gateway to Korean culture. And so if you click this one, you would go to their YouTube site, and there's a 24-hour streaming of gateway to Korean culture. So there are many interesting topics that you can check if you're interested. And then you have the online cultural center. And here you will see different performances. There's contemporary ballet, there's modern dance, creative dance, there's also play, and you will also see some exhibitions here if you visit their sites. Now, a while ago, I showed you the website of the National Museum of Korea. And in the website itself, you will find different exhibitions online. Okay, so there are permanent exhibitions that you can see when you can actually see when you go to the National Museum, right? And then you also have special exhibitions. There are like specific dates where you can see the special exhibitions. And what I like about it is that there's also an immersive digital gallery where you can see some of the digital presentations in the National Museum of Korea. And then you also have exhibits online. Okay, so these are some of the exhibitions that you can see on their website. Okay, here, can anyone kind of recognize what does it mean? So it says 영화나 드라마는 그녀타고 집국 문화 생활이 있잖아. If you're tired of, watching movies or drama, you can check some of the cultural presentations or on the website dedicated to the promotion of culture. Okay, here, of course, this is culturego.kr. So you would see many performances and different lectures that you can watch at home. Okay, you don't need to go to various cultural venues just to enjoy some of the performances, because this was done because of what happened, right? Because of the public health restrictions. So if you visit that website, the culture.go.kr, you would see this portion. So these are like presentations. Okay. And then you also have perhaps these are documentaries and also talk shows. Okay. You also have something for your family or children. So, so a while ago, I mentioned something about the gateway to Korean culture, which somehow provides you a 24-hour streaming of anything about Korean culture. And here is the YouTube account. So the YouTube account was created in 2009, October of 2009, and the total accumulated views of this YouTube account is around 99 million. Okay. And here, what I noticed is that all the accounts, the YouTube accounts of the institutions that I've mentioned have links to Facebook, to Instagram, and even links to their website. And then you also can visit korea.net if you want to know more about what's happening in Korea. You can check that website. It gives you an up-to-date information. This is not just about culture, anything that is related to Korea. Okay, some of the important issues. And then you also have the Pungnip Pungakwon. And as I mentioned, if you're interested in learning more about the traditional performances, traditional music of Korea, you can visit this YouTube account. If you notice, their YouTube account is really updated. There's always a post. This was created back in 2010, okay? And the total number of views is around 17 million. And there's also a link provided for their Facebook and their website and also Instagram. And then you have when you go to the website of the National Gugak Center, you can also visit their e-Gugak Academy. Okay, so e-Gugak Academy can give you information about the traditional performances. You can even practice, some of their traditional um, traditional dance or performances. If you're really interested, you can check this one, the Gugak Academy. It's in the National Gugak Center's website. And then there's also another cultural portal or Munhwa portal in Korea. Okay, so this was created in 2010 or 2011. It has a total views of 12 million. Okay, so this one talks about this. These are like documentaries, short documentaries, or stories. Okay, about Korean culture. And then you have the National Museum of Modern and Contemporary Art. Okay, so they showcase some of the artworks also displayed in their museum, and also there are interviews conducted, interviewing some of their some of their artists. Okay, so the YouTube account was created in May 2013, and the number of views is about 5 million. Okay, now let's move on to the Philippines. If you're going to check the website of the National Commission for Culture and the Arts, the National Museum, and also the Cultural Center of the Philippines, you'll be able to find information. But what I noticed is that there are less information about, there's there's no portion related to virtual cultural mobilization campaigns. Okay, most of their mobilization cultural mobilization campaigns are posted via Facebook, and perhaps one of the reasons why um, they created the Facebook page and they're more active on Facebook page is because, as you know, Filipinos are like the number one user of Facebook, right? And I think for them it would be easier to somehow communicate and showcase some of the programs that they created for the public. Okay, if you check their Facebook page, you can see many updated posts related to culture. Okay. Similarly, if you look into the website of the National Museum, I was trying to find a virtual tour of the museum, but I wasn't able to find it on the website. And so I checked the Facebook page of um, the National Museum of the Philippines, and there are several posts related to the observation of Good Friday during the Holy Week, and other cultural related information. And then if you visit the Cultural Center of the Philippines, you will see they have Encyclopedia of Philippine Art. And if you check it, you'll see some of the photos and digital art, okay, showcasing Philippine arts and culture. So there are different sections here. You have architecture, visual arts, film, music, there's literature, broadcast arts, theater, dance. Okay. There's also featured content related to Lenten drama. Okay. Aside from that, they're also quite active in the or on Facebook page. Okay, so if you visit the Cultural Center of the Philippines Facebook page, you'll see these posts. Okay, so here you see the post about Lino Broca, the national artist for film. Aside from Facebook page, they also have YouTube accounts. Okay. So here, this is the YouTube account of the Cultural Center of the Philippines, and it was created in February 2010. And the total views is around 828,522. Okay, so there are several videos or performances if you check this website. I mean the YouTube account. Another YouTube account was from the National Commission for Culture and the Arts Philippines, and here they also post videos. Okay, but if you're going to compare it to the other sites, they're more active on on Facebook page than on YouTube. Okay, so the last post was like a month ago, and the total views of this YouTube account is around 854,491. And then you have the National Historical Commission of the Philippines. Here, it was created in September 5, 2014, and the total views is around 840,137 views. Okay, but unfortunately, if you check this YouTube account, you see the last post was 3 years ago. Okay, so if you're looking for like cultural programs, or historical programs of the National Historical Commission of the Philippines, they haven't updated their YouTube account. So how do we kind of effectively implement cultural mobilization? In doing this presentation, I kind of have some realizations. Okay, so number one, culture should always be part of our consciousness. Okay, you've seen the cultural mobilization of Korea, and you've also seen cultural mobilization in the Philippines. It's really hard to basically compare the two in terms of cultural mobilization because, of course, if you're going to look at Korea, they're more advanced in almost everything. Okay, so I think one of the things that we have to do first is to be able to be conscious about our culture. Okay, and we should be able to somehow translate this consciousness into something. Okay, so the next realization is that there should be a long-term plan for us to be able to create a successful cultural mobilization. I'm not saying that our country doesn't have a plan. In fact, if you're going, as I mentioned a while ago, there's a plan in the Philippine Development Plan of 2017-2022. But if you're going to read the text of the Philippine Development Plan, it's a bit wordy. Okay, and I was actually looking for how are you going to operationalize these terms? Okay, for example, sustaining and enhancing cultural assets to foster creativity and innovation for social economic growth. Um, if you're going to compare it to how Korea created it, I mean, of course, as I mentioned, you have to revisit historically, how Korea was able to develop their um, the cultural mobilization, okay, the promotion of their culture. Um, there's a stage there. You have to affirm it, the national identity. They used culture as a tool in strengthening, the regimes. And then now they use culture as a national instrument, the national economic instrument. Okay. So culture is basically one of the engines of South Korean economy, if you going to look at it. So we should be able to um, somehow be more concrete as to what do we really want to do. I mean, if you're going to look at various digital platforms, particularly, for example, YouTube, there are many things, many people, and most of the time foreigners, they're the ones talking about, Philippine culture, food, um, you know, how they enjoy their lives here in the Philippines, so on and so forth. But I think there is a need for the government to step up a bit in order for us to somehow realize whatever agenda or whatever plans we have in terms of our culture. Second thing is create relevant, or the third one is creating relevant infrastructure and institutions. Um, Although, if you would look into our the different institutions we have in the promotion of culture, you would see you would think that there's already enough infrastructure, and we already have enough laws related to culture. But the thing is, um, you would somehow realize that uh, most of the laws that we have created somehow are conflicting or containing conflicting provisions. Okay, and so this kind of hinders the promotion of culture. Okay, because um, whatever cultural initiatives one institution has, they can't basically do it because there's another kind of overlapping responsibilities from another institution. If you look into the case of South Korea, you would see that there's the Ministry of Culture, uh, Ministry of Culture, Sports, and Tourism. This is the main institution. So basically, um, it can draw uh, the plan, okay, and it can execute those plans together with the affiliated institutions like museums, library, the National Library, so that there would be a consistent, cultural initiatives. Okay, so fourth one is that resource mobilization, and um, this is where I think the Philippines somehow lacking behind. If you notice, the websites are very how do you say not very, if you're going to look at it, not very interesting, because people cannot uh, basically utilize the information in that site. Okay, but I'm not saying that they're somehow not doing anything about it. Okay, in fact, if you're going to look at the efforts of these institutions, they created Facebook page, and perhaps they wanted to connect more. They wanted to connect to more people, so they utilize a platform where most of the people are part of, something like that. But if you really are serious about promoting the culture of our country, there should be a mobilization of resources. Okay, how much uh, how much budget are we allotting for cultural promotion? You would, if you ask these institutions like the National Commission for Culture and the Arts, they can somehow give you answers. So lastly, collaboration is an essential ingredient. Um, One thing that I noticed in the case of South Korea is that there are collaborations of um, different institutions, okay, government, non-government organizations, even private organizations are mobilizing for them to be able to promote culture. Okay. So moving forward, uh, I think there's a need to create a more resilient platforms for cultural mobilization. There's also a need to harmonize the policies of our country if we want to somehow better cultural promotion. And having in mind the idea that, um, pandemic uh, can always happen. Okay, and so there is a need for us to be able to build a resilient platforms, and also we should be able to harmonize all our policies for us to better promote the culture of our country. Okay. And then we need to also create capacity building programs and trainings for people who are within the cultural industry, and then create innovative ways of organizing cultural works. Um, if you look into the way South Korea, the way South Korea is doing it, there are various organizations doing innovative cultural works, and they use different platforms to reach out to people. Okay, so to end my presentation, I'd like to share with you this quote from Max Weber, and it says, if we learn anything from the history of economic development, it is that culture makes almost the difference. So this quote reminds me of how South Korea was able to transform, its culture from just um, a tool for to strengthen whatever, to strengthen the society itself, but also a tool for economic development. Okay? Um, because of the different policies and the different programs that they created, they were able to create an industry, a cultural industry that helps the economy. Okay, so with that, thank you very much for listening. Maraming salamat.
Thank you, Mr. Ysla, for that very informative talk. We learned about the important cultural-related policies of Philippines and Korea, the cultural institutions of both countries, and how Korea and Philippines use the virtual setting in campaigning their culture during this pandemic, and how to effectively implement cultural mobilization. Now we will be proceeding to our open forum, and the speakers will be answering the questions that will be flashed on the screen. Now, for our first question, okay, our first question, please. Let's wait for our tech to flash the question. Okay, so this question goes for Mr. Ysla. So it says here, what cultural related policies of Korea can be applied, if not replicated, in the Philippines in terms of promotion, protection, preservation, and public?
Um, can you hear me? Sorry. Well, I think it's really for me it would be difficult if we're just going to copy whatever policy South Korea has, right? I mean, we have different context. We are in a different situation. What is important is for us to be able to draw a very clear plan on where do we really want to go as a country in terms of cultural promotion. Okay, because if we like just get whatever policies that are there in South Korea and then do it here in the context of the Philippines, there might be differences because one, South Korea is already, you know, advanced in terms of cultural promotion, right? But we still, I would say, we are still in the process of, you know, putting things together in terms of our own culture. So we need to first plan exactly where do we want to go as a country in terms of cultural promotion and promotion of our culture, a preservation of our culture. And then from there, we can basically draw whatever policies that we need to strengthen, okay, the goals or the plans that we have.
Okay, thank you, Sir Isla, for that. I hope the, that question was answered. Okay, so next for our next question, please.
All right, apologies for that. I think our moderator got disconnected. So for our next question, okay, I think this is addressed to Sir Wangoo. Okay, from Carlos Harry de Taza, what is needed to be done to fulfill this eudaimonic plus hedonic formula? The Philippines definitely faces infrastructural, administrative, and even security challenges.
Well, what did Masunggito Reserve or Batanes did to be more like eudaimonic destination as well as hedonic destination? It's not like that they invest a lot of money, a lot of amount of money for infrastructure development. I think, especially for Masungi, the Geo Reserve, actually they spend a lot of money, uh, uh, not really to develop, but to preserve that place. They kind of even give up a huge financial benefits from the tourists by limiting the number of tourists who can enter the trails or any areas in one day. So, well, what Masunggito Reserve does to give both hedonic and eudaimonic experiences is that they kind of balance out with their experiential components. They could not develop, they actually could not develop at all that place as a tourist destination. Maybe they don't install the thrilling components like bridges or spider nets or something else, but the visitors just walk and hike. So it becomes a true eudaimonic place. Maybe only a few nature lovers will love it, but many people will find it too boring and they are not gonna visit there. Or they also could have developed the place entirely by accepting like maximum number of the visitors and install put some exciting campfire places or something like that to attract a lot of people. Then many people will love it, but maybe just one time because this kind of camping fire places can be found in other places too. It's not special anymore. So my answer is not really about, maybe not, it's about the administration and policy because I'm not expert there, but my research focuses more on the individual psychology and behavior. So one way with my perspective to nurture both eudaimonic and hedonic elements in a destination is to balance well between them, because you can see they might conflict each other too, but you might want to find the sweet spot in the continuum between hedonia and eudaimonia, not too niche, not to be the too niche destination, but also to retain some loyal tourists there too. So yeah, that's my answer.
Okay. Thank you, Sir Wangoo, for that answer. Okay, and thank you also to Carlos for asking that very interesting question. So next, for our next question. Okay, so it says here, another question on the shared experience. Massive loss of cultural heritage during occupation, World War II, Cold War. What are the differences of on the two countries' cultural recovery from that point? So I think this question goes for Mr. Ysla.
I'm muted, sorry. Uh, there are, yeah, I agree. There are many cultural heritages um, that can be attributed to World War II and also the Cold War. Um, but in Korea, for example, there is the National Museum, the War Museum, right, in Korea. Um, and there you can see uh, the devastation that happened during the Korean War. You will also see the different countries that responded to defend South Korea from the enemy. Um, in the case of the Philippines, I think we have uh, the museum in Bataan. The How do you call that one? There's a museum in Bataan, Museum of World War II. The one with big cross in the mountain.
Is that in the Mount Samat? There's
Yes,
the one.
yes, yes. Right, right. So there's one, and also of course in Corregidor. Okay. Um, so in terms of cultural recovery, I'm not sure exactly the efforts of the government of the Philippines related to the cultural recovery of um, that would be associated to the World War II. Okay, but in terms of the cultural heritage, or the things that South Korea wanted to showcase during the Cold War, I think it's quite intact. Even a museum. There's also a museum dedicated for during the Japanese occupation. There are a lot of people who were incarcerated. Okay, because of um, they say the, they say rebellion. Okay, but of course, you if you visit the uh, what's the name of that place? It's a Sodemun prison cell. Okay, so you would see there's also a museum dedicated for the heroes of the Republic of Korea. Okay, because um, most people that were incarcerated in that area are those who really pushed for the independence of of Korea from Japan.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Isla. And I hope, Carlos, that answers your question. Okay, so for our next question, okay, so it says here, just recently, K-netizens showed disapproval of Joseon Exorcist historical inaccuracies, which caused the K-drama to be cancelled. Years back, there was a Philippine historical film released, and Filipino netizens asked why Apolinario Mabini kept hitting down on the movie. It seems that Koreans are very particular and knowledgeable of their history, while Filipinos are opposite or incomparable to Koreans at least. What could possibly be the cause? And is this a result of the Philippine government's lack of proper implementation of its cultural laws? So I think that question also goes again to Mr. Isla.
Mm-mm. Well, um, if you've lived in South Korea, you would see that there are a lot of traditional dramas, right? That somehow tackles the historical um, the historical events that happen in Korea, the Korean Peninsula. Okay, but you seldom see it here in the Philippines. And what perhaps one of the reasons is um, people are thinking about whether it will be it will be um, or people will support whatever movies or series that will be created, because some people will see it's boring, right? But another issue perhaps would be, of course, how we look at our history. Okay, because I mean, if you're going to look at the historical books that we have, I mean, um, no offense to the most of the historians, but of course, if you're going to look at the public textbooks, I mean the books that were used in public schools, you would see um, how exactly history is portrayed, and how exactly history is taught in our country. So there's still, I would say, a lot of things to do in terms of how we um, strengthen the awareness of people in terms of the historical events that happen in our country. Okay, as compared to, of course, South Korea, they're very proud of their culture and their historical past. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Isla, and I hope, Andrea, that answers your question. Okay, next, let's move on to the next question. Okay, so it says here, you mentioned a while ago that some people would rather visit a country they've never been to instead of going back to the same country. How do you suggest we address this? Because if this is the case, our tourism wouldn't thrive very much. So I think this question it goes for Sir Wangoo.
Yeah, good question. Thank you for the question. There can be two different solutions in terms of eudaimonic experience and hedonic experience. If let's say that, well, for it happens for the tourists that they don't really visit a country again, is because in the first visit they find something new. Tourists by nature find something new and novel, so they're gonna find it in the first visit. But after they find it from the first visit, in the second visit or the third visit, they're not gonna find it. They're gonna find it less, at least. And that is the reason why they don't want to visit a place one more time, even though they were very satisfied. It's different with buying some kind of products. Like for the consumers, when they buy one product and then they are satisfied, of course they're gonna buy it again in the later time. But the tourists are different with the typical consumers. When they get satisfied some many people are not gonna visit there again. So for one solution is providing more eudaimonic experience. Eudaimonic tourists are not novelty seekers. They are not new thing seekers, but they are more like the ones, even though the destination is too familiar with them, but still they want to visit there because they are highly attached. They depend on it. They love that place. So they'd like to go there, even though it's not new, it's not exciting, but still want to go there. So that's one of the solutions that I mentioned from this presentation. And the second one is actually hedonic too. So it's if the destination is truly hedonic, one solution is that giving different kind of new things again, having various kinds of contents. This is gonna be one example. Will be one bad example can also find in Korea too. You see that many foreign tourists actually come to the Korea, but they don't really revisit there again because they only find something new in Seoul, the capital city, and then that's it. People, tourists only go to Seoul and then they find it, and then they think that that's all. Maybe we can go to different countries later time. But if you think about Japan, tourists, especially the international tourists, tend to perceive, not all, but many people tend to perceive different kind of cities and regions in Japan when it comes to international tourism. It's not only about, oh, when I say that I go to Japan, it's not like, oh, I go Japan, but it's like I go to Tokyo, or oh, I go to Okinawa for this time, or stuff like that. So it's like giving different kind of new things. So even though it's truly hedonic for someone, Japan might be a truly hedonic destination for someone. Still, they can find it novel or new, even though in the second visit or third visit. So yeah, that can be the two solutions that I can suggest.
And I think that's why it is very important for our tourism planners to actually match the needs of the eudaimonic and the hedonic tourists here in the Philippines to be able to satisfy their needs.
True.
So for our next question, thank you for that, Sir Wangoo. Okay. Okay. So for our next question, with South Korea as a model, what policies and strategies can we employ in the Philippines to ensure the conservation of cultural heritage and promotion collective historical consciousness? So this question goes to Mr. Ysla.
I think for me, it's important for us to streamline whatever institutions we have, because you have the thing is, we have institutions like National Commission for Culture and the Arts, National Historical Commission. These institutions were created separately by separate policies, okay? And they don't have the exact, although they have the capacity to influence policies. If you're going to look at it, we the the power of um, the ministries are, much larger if you're going to look at it in the case of Korea. So I think in terms of institutions, we need to be able to first streamline, okay, the institutions that we have, so that whatever policies that we're going to create will be implemented um, by the different agencies. Okay, because right now, because the institutions have their separate mandates, etc., so they do their own thing. Okay, although I'm not saying that there's no collaboration among these institutions, but as mentioned in the Philippine Development Plan, there are overlappings of whatever responsibilities in the implementation of cultural initiatives. So there. we need to be able to strengthen further our institution so that we can be able to achieve whatever goals we have related to our culture. And I also want to add, um, after you strengthen the institution, you need to be able to, mobilize resources. I mean, you put funds for cultural promotion because um, you cannot just promote it, for free, right? You really have to spend huge amount of money if you want to go somewhere. I mean, if your plan is to be something, if your plan is something big, right? Like introducing Philippine culture globally, right? You should be able to spend or you provide resources.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Isla. Next, we move on to our last question. Okay, for our last question, please. Okay, so it says here, Korean restaurants and products are all over the country, and Filipinos are really welcoming to Korean. Does this give off a feel of home vibe? If so, does this perhaps contribute to Philippines as a eudaimonic destination? So, the question is for Sir Wanggo.
Sure, I think so. I agree with that too. Well, as I presented, one of the biggest eudaimon experience that the Koreans get from the Philippines is relatedness, and relatedness is also related with the family or the friendship, something social engagement. It's mostly because that especially the people who visit the Philippines, they have kind of like lacking social um, ties in everyday lives as well. Maybe because Korean is getting more individualistic society um, quickly. So when they go to the Philippines, there, um, especially for the people who already experienced some more like a collectivistic society before when they were in a childhood or stuff like that, they're gonna have they're gonna feel more, as Andrea said, feel at home vibe more, I guess. And then this is gonna definitely contribute to having more the eudaimon experience in the Philippines. Yeah, so I agree with that.
Okay, thank you for that, Sir Wanggo. And thank you everyone for all your questions. There were a lot of very engaging questions, and we hope the speakers were able to answer those. And apologies to those questions that aren't brought up due to our time restriction, and also thank you again to our speakers. Before we end today's program, UP Ariang would like to present our certificate of appreciation to Mr. Wangoo Lee and Mr. Mark Salvador Isla. First, for Mr. Wang Pili, who would like to present the Certificate of Appreciation for imparting your valuable knowledge and insights during the 2021 Philippine-Korean Youth Forum organized by UP Ariang and co-presented by UP Korea Research Center and Pinoy Scholars sa Korea, given this 21st day of April 2021. Likewise, Mr. Mark Isla, we would like to present the Certificate of Appreciation for your time and contribution here at the Philippine-Korea Youth Forum, signed by our UP Ariang President Cassandra de la Cruz and UP Ariang Advisor Dr. Kyungmin Bae. We will be sending a copy of the certificate via email and also through mail post. Once again, thank you very much. And to wrap up, UP Ariang would like to thank our speakers, delegates, and everyone who streamed today's session under the Culture and Tourism track. PKYF is a week-long event organized by UP Ariang, co-presented by UP Korea Research Center and Pinoy Scholars of Korea, made possible by APOP and JK Network Services, in partnership with ADSA Animo, Anyong PNU, and UP Uyo Muyo, in cooperation with Blue Hango Society and FEU International Studies Society. Also brought to you by Ateneo Celadon and co-promoted by Korean Cultural Center in the Philippines. Tomorrow we'll be having our fourth day of keynote lectures under the Economy and Trade track. So make sure to tune in on our Facebook and YouTube page at 5 p.m. And again, I am Adarna from UP Arang, and this is Philippine-Korea Youth Forum #Transcending Borders.